WLNYTV, New York 55.
My daughter Mara, Tommy, jumped off a bridge in New Zealand with rubber bands attached to her ankles. What did I do wrong?
This has to make a father feel real good.
But I said, what did I do wrong, Mara?
Well, Mark, we seem to be a nation that is taking more and more risks, but the question is, how healthy can it be?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, I understand driving on the LIE. That's a risk. That's a risk. But I don't...
That's as far as the rabbi goes with risk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... In fact, it was just a case where this woman showing how great it is to jump off a rock with your parachute somewhere fell to her death. And people who jump out of airplanes and parachuting and crazy risk-taking adventures, there's something happening. What do you think it is?
Folks, we're just two wimpy white guys. That's what it is. But we're going to speak today to some people who have a perspective on this that may be wider than what we have.
I think so. There's something about our world that is provoking this kind of risk-taking behavior. Maybe in you, though if you were really a risk-taker, it's highly unlikely you'd be watching a Catholic television station. On the other hand, maybe you have a kid who's a risk-taker. So you should stay tuned for today because we have some wonderful guests. Peter Guttman, photographer and author of Worlds to Imagine and Adventures to Imagine, a truly gifted photographer. We'll show you some of his amazing...
Now, I like the word adventure a lot, and psychologist Frank Farley is going to talk with us about that idea that taking a conscious risk involves overcoming some of our instincts. So there may be a good part to this that we've got to explore. He's even developed a quiz that you can take it home to find out if you are a risk taker.
Thrill seekers and risk takers on today's God Squad.
They jump from 600 foot with only a parachute. Some scale 3,000-foot mountains. Others race cars at over 150 miles an hour. They're all considered thrill seekers. And joining us in the studio is one of them. Please welcome author, photographer, and adventure risk taker, Peter Guttman.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Good morning.
Peter, I love your photography. It's just wonderful. But first I wanted to ask you why you seem to be attracted to going to exotic places where you do weird and risky things. What happened to you? Were you dropped, Peter?
Not that I'm used to correcting rabbis, but I think the more appropriate question...
this is good.
I think the more appropriate question at the top is not where did you go wrong, but where did you go right? Because
okay.
I think that often risk takers are exploring the outer edge of their envelopes, trying to look at the terrain of their own personality and see how they can kind of go into new frontiers. And these are people, I think, that are looking to celebrate and enjoy the enthusiasm of living on this planet.
That's a wonderful way to put it, but how would you differentiate that from my mother's description of it, which would be, this is an irresponsible taking of risk with the only precious life you have for no good reason?
Well, I think that it's all about risk management, and if in fact bungee jumping was something that was irresponsible and the numbers showed that the fatalities and the injuries are so great, she would have a point, but I don't think that's the case. And I think
but people do get injured doing it. In fact, that woman doing extreme parachuting just fell to her death about a week ago out in the West. So the question is not how many fatalities, I think, in these things. The question is, why would you put yourself in a position where you would even have to assume that risk?
You know, because a life that is not well explored is not really, in my opinion, a life that is so worth living. People get injured in all sorts of things, including driving their automobiles and slipping in their bathtubs.
Well, which they have to do. You have to take a bath.
So how much does one immunize themselves from experiencing the grandeur of our planet and what's around us?
We're going to take a look at some
Good
of the
point.
photography that Peter has done in an extraordinary way.
Yeah, we can talk over the pictures.
There's a tornado.
This is where I had doubts about you. You chase tornadoes. You know, I can understand some of your adventures in this wonderful
Here
book.
we go.
Tornado chasing is actually, when done with the correct people, there I am running through the frame, is really a front row seat to one of nature's most awesome spectacles. And I find weather and severe storms to be an extraordinarily beautiful natural phenomenon to look at. And
Yes,
with
I agree.
professional storm chasers.
I agree, and the further away I am from tornadoes, the more beautiful they are. But I
Mark,
guess
I
someone has to get close in order to get the pictures.
That's true.
I had an experience in ABC News in which there was an invasion of Hungary years ago. And I'm sitting at the news desk, and word came over the AP that there was this invasion. All of the investigative reporters, right away, their juices started to flow. They wanted to be there in the worst way possible. Like yourself, I wanted to stay in New York. Peter, do you see yourself as a risk taker or as a photographer?
I see myself as an artist that is trying to capture and immerse myself with the beauty of many of life's most amazing experiences. I've always been frustrated that you only have, as far as we know for a certainty, one life to live, and I've tried to cram
You're on the
as many...
North Pole now?
Oh yeah, here are celebrants after arriving at the North Pole by icebreaker, and one of the many adventures I featured in Worlds to Imagine. And as I mentioned, I tried to kind of overcome the frustration of only having that one mortality span and try to cram as many experiences
You know, one of the things
as possible.
we do in the religious life is we encourage people to move beyond the words, to move into the experience. Are you suggesting that for yourself and for others? Now, we have some of your photos here.
What
The
is
best
that
way is to
photo?
get inside the experience?
I think getting inside the experience is very important. Here I'm about as high up above the experience as you can get, looking down on the tall ships of sea cloud from 300 feet up.
Yeah, that's a great picture, and the sea cloud taking a cruise through the Caribbean, this is my idea of taking a risk. I like that idea.
Well, that particular shot was taken from the top of a mast.
Well, all right, so you don't have to be at the top of the mast.
And
But
then we had a
race
race
car
car.
driving, that's nuts. That's just nuts. 150 miles an hour in that car.
Mark, I've seen you drive 150
Yeah,
miles an hour.
but
And also remember your
I'm a
rear
man
end.
of God.
Your rear end is just inches above the pavement as you're zooming along in this vehicle. It's quite an extraordinary experience.
yeah, I know.
I don't know whether we have the guts.
Well,
No.
see, now that's the wrong way to put it. That assumes that doing this stuff is right and courageous. And that's really an open question. I'm very open to the idea of adventure, and I think when we talk more about the personality types.
Here's another.
Rock climbing up in the Seneca Rocks of West Virginia. I think it's all about
Mark.
it's all about ensuring that your soul does not grow gray before your hair does. And I think most of us are born with an element of risk-taking in us. And as we get older and older, we're kind of disciplined into trying to immediately abandon that sense of...
Are there things you won't do?
Yeah, of course. I love life. I love living. I'm not on any kind of suicide watch where I want to imperil myself.
Okay.
I think it's a matter of gauging and judging intelligently about where you're really putting yourself into risk and where you're taking a calculated gamble. Because I think so often it's overblown, the elements of risk and danger that.
What have you turned down? Give us an example of a risk, of an adventure
Appearing on a show with a guy.
that you said pass.
I don't think I could give you an example
All
of that
right.
at the moment
All
because
right.
I haven't been offered that many totally suicidal adventures. Most offerings that are given to me to explore the world are done with enough of a safety margin that I have felt comfortable with.
How about strapping hamburger meat and fish carcasses to your body and swimming into an area where sharks live?
I have fed the sharks in Bora Bora, but they're reef sharks, and if you basically mind the laws of supply and demand, keep your eyes on your fingers and the mouth of the sharks, you're in good shape.
Well, in return, we're going to talk to a person who can help us understand who is a risk taker and who is not. Meet the psychologist who will tell you the answer to that question, so stay tuned.
Catch Hofstra University's Millennium Moment, weeknight during New York 55's primetime movie at 8.
welcome back.
Not a chance.
We're joined by Frank Barley,
Not a chance.
doctor.
You're not
Frank.
going to do it.
I-
You're not going to bungee jump.
Okay,
We
if,
need
if you
your
if
wife
you
needs you.
insist.
Your kids need
If you
you.
insist. We're talking about thrill-seeking and risk-taking. Frank, welcome. Good to have you on the show.
Delighted.
I love the work that you've done. You're a psychologist at Temple University, and you've been studying risk-takers and people you describe as type T. What is that?
Type T personality, the T stands for thrill, capital letter T. And think of a continuum of human behavior. At one end you have the big T, the other end you have the small t. And by the way, most people are neither a big T nor a small t. The big T are the thrill seekers, risk takers, excitement seekers, stimulation seekers. The people we're talking about today. The small T people at the other end are very risk averse. It's almost impossible to get them into any of the situations that Peter is in and other risk situations.
Why do some people take big risks?
Well, I think that there's a series of things that motivate the type T risk taker. Things like variety, novelty, intensity. They like an intense life, change, uncertainty. They thrive in the realm of the unknown, of the uncertain. They tend to have high energy levels. They tend to believe they are in control of their fate, that is, their destiny is in their hands. And they show strong independence of judgment, which means they like to make up their own mind. They're very independent-minded people.
Okay, well, all those are positive traits. Are there any negative traits associated with T-type people?
Indeed. There's the T positive. That's what I think we're sort of talking about T positive today, but
Well,
you might disagree with me on that point.
I don't know, polar bear hunting, I don't know, I'm not sure. Tornado chasing, I'm not sure.
The other side is the T negative, and there you have a wide range of crimes, violence, a lot of delinquent behaviors.
But it's the same type of person.
Yes. I believe they start from the same place in childhood.
And then?
They start off as T-types. And depending on the environment, the parental influence, the community, the religious influences, etc., on their life, they can go in the T-positive direction, become a very creative, independent, kind of risk-taking person, or they can go in the destructive forms of the T-negative.
Peter, did you ever think when you were, say, tornado chasing and things like that there was a good chance you might lose your life?
No, because the people I had been traveling with had been doing this for years and had seen dozens of tornadoes.
So you scoped it out first?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I think a lot of it, as was just mentioned, does have to do with your upbringing, and my parents, I think, were very instrumental in encouraging my wonder and curiosity about the world, and I think that's where my own sense of awe and majesty about the planet has come from.
Frank, my dad told me a story that when he was a late teenager, he was in the service, the Merchant Marines, and he told me that they were out at sea, the monsoon season, etc. He never thought that he would ever lose his life. He did a lot of risky things. He said now, and at the time he was 50, he said, I wouldn't be seen dead in that circumstance. I have a different sense of life.
That raises an interesting point, Tommy. Do people go, Frank, through stages where they're T-types when they're young, and then they grow out of that?
Our best guess is no. They tend to, if you're a big T at age 20, you're probably, compared to the rest of the people in your life.
Your peers.
Yeah.
Your peers. At age 70, you're going to be a bigger T than they are, but you'll be a little bit less than you were at age 20. So big Ts, the type T personality, so far as we know, tends to be with you through much of your life. It may change, the expression of it may change. Evel Knievel, for example, one of the world's great T-types, doesn't do that physical stuff anymore, but now he's an artist, he's an entrepreneur, he's still got that kind of pushing the envelope.
So he's got the drive, but just in a safe
different
area.
way. Different way. Now it's more intellectual.
Some of it is, you see a lot of T-types in compulsive gambling.
You can definitely get some T-types in gambling. It's not an addictive personality, but they can get, because they're the experimenters of life. They want to experiment with things. They want to experience life to the fullest. They can run into things that are addictive, like drugs or like gambling, because they want to try it out. They try it out, and then they get hooked. But they're not intrinsically addictive themselves.
Peter, what are some of the most beautiful things you've seen as a result of taking certain of these risks?
I think, for example, taking icebreakers down in through Antarctica and seeing these extraordinary huge jade icebergs drifting by immense frozen monument valleys as thousands of king penguins are squawking and squealing and hanging from a cage from the front of that icebreaker as it's crashing into the icebergs, and the seals are all scattering in order to photograph the icebreaker in the Weddell Sea.
Is that the cage you were in?
Yeah, that was actually the shot where I was photographing the polar circle down in the Weddell Sea.
Now, what are you dressed in there?
I'm in a survival suit to prevent immediate hypothermia if you fall into the water, but as you can see, that was quite a beautiful spot.
Yeah. So in other words, with that suit on, instead of freezing to death in about 10 seconds?
You have another 20 seconds.
Yeah, before they get you that. So
he is a real risk taker. Wait a minute, you are a risk taker.
I think I am.
You know, I think it's the physical things that bother you. Intellectually, you are a risk taker.
Without a doubt. And some of the physical things, too. I don't think I'd ever do a bungee thing, but, and spelunking, which was one of your
But hosting
adventures.
a talk show, that's risk-taking right there.
I think there is something in me, there's no doubt, that wants action, that wants my blood to run, and that a quiet, boring day is one of my worst fears.
I had a cousin of mine who loved to go to horror movies and scary movies. I just avoided them totally. So is that in the area of risk-taking?
It is. It's what I would call T-mental. I mean, it's psychological forms of risk-taking, pushing the edge psychologically. Some people are afraid of horror movies. They're afraid that they might sink into something mentally.
What do we have here? This is a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah. Now, this is a very big T activity, right?
It is, but it's not as big T as, say, climbing Mount Everest.
No.
Because
This is safer?
there's no lethal risk here.
Well,
There's tremendous sensations that you get that can scare you, throw you all around. And
yeah. See, I draw the line where throwing up on my pants is going to happen. Anything where I'm going to throw up on my pants.
I can understand why you've drawn
Not
the line there.
interested in that. In fact, any pants mistake of any kind, I'm not looking for.
In terms of counseling, if somebody is considered over the edge and it's getting dangerous and that, what do you do with that person?
Well, firstly, don't lay down a lot of rules, because these folk are natural-born rule breakers. There's
Mark, I
evidence.
think you're one of them.
Please, keep going.
By the way, there is evidence for genetic influence here. Guiding them, suggesting alternatives. They're probably, they may be, if they're taking too many risks that you feel are dangerous, or that they're threatening them. What you got to do is you won't throttle back the risk taking very much, but you can channel it into more healthy forms where they're not going to kill themselves.
Let me look at it the other way.
Safe thrill.
What about the person who is so sedentary, they don't take any risks, and you think that life is just passing them by? How do you get them off their fanny and into life?
If they're way down at the end, what I call the small T, you're not going to do a whole lot. That's the way they are. And actually, they're going to be happiest when their world is relatively structured and predictable, and there aren't a lot of risks.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong.
I married a little T.
See, to me, the
wrong with
biggest risk that I want to avoid is the risk of looking back on my life from a rocking chair and regretting that it was so full of
You never went
routine
for it.
and so lacking in passion and so lacking in
Yes.
experience.
Passion is, I think, the key word that I identify with. I completely understand that you have to have a life full of passion. On the other hand, I'm smart enough to know, as you are as well, that you can't do things that risk your life just for a thrill. That when you really pull back and look at it in any kind of intelligent, objective way, it's really stupid. There's risks that we have to take. And I think that's an important philosophical difference. The stuff we have to do that's risky, driving a car.
Good risk.
Well, necessary risks and unnecessary risks. Frank, how do we distinguish? Is it important? Is it valuable to distinguish something like that, a necessary risk and an unnecessary risk?
You could, but I wouldn't agree with it.
Okay.
In the sense
Neither would I.
that people, for example, you remember in 1996, 8 people perished on Mount Everest, and there was a great outcry. Many famous books, Into Thin Air by John Krakauer and others, were a fallout of that. And people were saying we need more rules. It's not right that those people do that. But those people died doing a great thing from their point of view. They didn't have to do it, but they did it. And, you know, it's often struck me that, we all know we're all going to die. As I tell my students, everybody who exercised many hours every day in the 19th century is dead. So we're all going to die. And if you die doing some grand and great thing for you, psychologically, well, what's wrong with that?
Well,
have a problem
here's
with
the
that.
other side of
The
it.
rabbi's in favor of life.
Yeah, well, no, it's the other side, and
Long life.
it comes from our tradition. And that tradition is that thrill and risk are a value. For some people, a high value. But they are not the only value. And the other value is the preservation of life. And for a person to say, hey, I can throw away my life climbing Mount Everest, may be their legal right. But from our point of view as clergy, and our concern on this show, this kind of evaluation that we do here, is it their moral right? Is it their spiritual right? Not, should there be a law against it? I don't think there should be a law against it. But I'm not sure that it's right for someone to risk their life to climb a high rock.
You know, I think there's a huge spiritual component in being able to go out there and put yourself on the line and truly try to experience and feel and celebrate the excitement and the majesty of what life is, as opposed to seeing life like from the back seat, you know, the last row of the stadium.
Fair point, but we'll close with this. I want your evaluation of that woman who was trying to make a point about how people should be allowed to jump off the rocks in the national park and parachute. I think it's called extreme parachuting. She fell to her death. What was your reaction to that briefly?
It was sad.
Sad, but great she filled her life?
It was sad, but it was much less sad than someone who dies going about things that they're not that enthusiastic and excited about.
We'll be back in a minute.
Falling
We've
down
run
the
out of
stairs
time.
in your house, you know, and breaking your neck, as opposed to doing something she truly wanted to do. Yes, it was sad.
There
but
it is.
It happened.
That's the difference.
2-0 against the rabbi.
Okay.
I weigh in with the rabbi. We'll be back in a minute.